Right now, the defense is giving their closing arguments, and the prosecution could begin their closing within the hour. We'll keep you updated with the minute-by-minute coverage on the right side of your screen. But meanwhile, right outside the courtroom, that's where a lot of action was happening this morning. The Biden campaign held a news conference starring Robert De Niro, who lashed out at former President Trump as protesters shouted him down.
I love this city. I love this city. I don't want to destroy it. Donald Trump wants to destroy not only the city, but the country, and eventually he could destroy the world. It's no surprise that the murder rate and other violent crimes peaked under Trump and are falling under Biden. We'd forgotten the lessons of history that showed us other clowns who weren't taken seriously until they became vicious dictators. With Trump, we have a second chance, and no one is laughing now.
He said that Trump will destroy the country and the world. It sounds a lot like what Biden did. And keep in mind, he was there on behalf of the Biden campaign. He was not there in his personal capacity. Moments later, the Trump campaign responded with this.
Everybody knows this case is complete garbage. President Trump did nothing wrong. This is all politics. If you don't think this is politics, then why did the Democrats wheel out a retread like Robert De Niro to try to change the subject? You could see the look on the Biden campaign staffers' faces. They knew this was a bad idea. They didn't want to be here. But somebody at Central Command told them that everything is going down the tubes for Joe Biden.
Yeah, I'm perplexed by this, Sandra. I read an article yesterday. It came out over the weekend. It is from Politico, and here's what it said. Biden himself gave the directive a year ago that entities that the White House controls, which includes the re-election campaign and the DNC, were not to publicly discuss any of the criminal investigations into Trump, keeping a clear line between the West Wing and the DOJ. Beyond a few jokes, Biden's team has largely stuck to that edict. Until today, what changed?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, if anything presents the case that Dems are in full-blown freak-out mode, it was Robert De Niro. I'm joining the Biden campaign outside of the Trump trial there this morning. But Jason quoted that Political article that Dems are in full-blown freak-out mode. The article almost left me in hysterics. I mean, the way they were quoting Democratic advisors, I mean, you couldn't help but laugh at some of the things that they were saying. They said, many of them who were anonymously quoted in the Politico, saying that they're asked on an hourly basis, like, what are we going to do here? The polling's getting worse by the day. One of them says he pours a drink every time he's asked the question just to buy some time on how to respond. But Trump's running ahead of Biden in most battleground states. He's outpacing his fundraising. The Dems, if they're not in freak-out mode, they're certainly worried.
Yeah, there's no doubt they may need a few drinks if they look at some of the most recent polls like the New York Times Siena. Jason, here was President Trump this morning.
Make no mistake about it. I'm here because of crooked Joe Biden. Just see who's in the courtroom. You'll see, and you'll see where they come from. This is all election hunting, election interfering.
So, Jason, this is what's so curious to me. You heard Trump there saying this is the Biden trial. I'm here because of Biden. So that's why I'm all the more perplexed when I read in Politico, Biden intends to initially address the verdict in a White House setting, not a campaign one, to show his statement isn't political, according to the people who were granted anonymity to discuss internal deliberations. So he's playing into Trump's hand. Trump says, I'm here because of Biden, and Biden's response is, oh, I might talk about the verdict from the White House.
So addressing it from the White House is not political on a campaign? This is so absurd. The Biden campaign, first of all, they're so grumpy. There is no more grumpier person in the country than Robert De Niro. And they're grumpy because things aren't going well. They have nothing to talk about. It was Memorial Day weekend. And Joe Biden was where? Taking a nap in Delaware.
Yeah.
Literally not doing campaign events on Saturday and Sunday. I mean, he did the right thing on Monday at the Tomb and all that. But come on. And to say that it's not political, the number 3 person at the Department of Justice, as prestigious as it gets, leaves to go work on this prosecution case. And then they say, oh, Biden's Department of Justice had nothing to do with it. Nobody believes them.
Yeah, it seems to me trying to have it both ways. It's stay out, but never mind. Maybe we'll just lean right in. I mean, Emily, they're thinking of calling the former president convicted felon Donald Trump if the verdict goes the way of guilty. Like they are openly going to celebrate this if this political reporting has any bearing of truth.
It was a massive whiplash, change of mind, change of heart, apparently. And the thing is that they could be taking the higher road the entire time. Remember, Biden promised that in his campaigning where he said, I'll be the adult in the room. He's shown anything but. And to me, this absolutely displays not only a panic, but a sort of devolving of any type of class, right? And you contrast them trotting out De Niro, whose speech, by the way, whose comments were radically outdated. I was watching with a group of people, everyone of different ilk, and we were all like, what is he talking about? Because we live here too. Oh, no. So when he's talking about the violence under Trump, we didn't know what he was talking about because we personally have experienced a spike in violence during Biden's administration, not Trump's. He was bringing up sort of violent imagery of the blood on his hands. He's never taken a punch. That is so outdated. And it really, I think, gives everyone a poor taste in their mouth right now when so many families are dealing with the violence of drug overdoses, drug poisonings, the violence on the streets in all of these Dem-led cities under Biden's watch. So for them to pretend to be more graceful and better than us at all times, and then sort of come out with this January 6th also nonsense, while President Trump is the one that sticks to exactly what Americans want to hear about because it's what they're feeling. He's not saying, disregard what you're feeling, I'm going to tell you what to feel and think. He says, yep, we are all feeling this right now, taking advantage of every moment. Talk about efficacy. The difference is staggering.
So this is what happens when, to borrow your phrase, one grumpy old man who's 81 calls another grumpy old man who's 80, and they get together. Somebody writes a script, and then the younger guy by a year, Robert De Niro, delivers it. I mean, it's steeped in 1957 or whatever year that they can remember right off the top of their heads or read on a script. And it's unfortunate because there are people, as Emily points out, who really would like to hear a word that the president can solve some of their problems, since he can't actually, tell us that, because he can't even understand what the problems are. I do find it politically interesting that this is the guy who would be a mouthpiece when you're bleeding younger voters and people of color. Right. That the guy who comes out cussing mad, you think that's going to reach women in the suburbs.
Right.
You think that's really going to help people pay their bills. That you trot out this guy who's angrier than the original Joe Biden. I mean, what is it about the grumpy old men being angry? And then Biden seems to think more of the same is going to help him. I'm not convinced that he didn't know about this. I'm sure he was part of the conversation for get to the courthouse now, because if that case wraps up and the verdict is an acquittal, we need to get a jump on it because that gag order doesn't work in Florida because that's been denied, and he's going to be all over it. So they jump on the stump of the White House today. I don't know how effective that is if these are your people.
Yeah. If I had to place a wager, I think Robert De Niro is going to get a Truth Social this evening, and I look forward to reading it. All right. Well, as Sandra mentioned, Democrats are, quote, freaking.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.